Hello, everybody. So, I recently posted a poll on LinkedIn asking people to participate and give their opinions on something that's very important, something that is shaping up world economy for the last few years. And I think it's very important that we all get together and try to address some of the challenges that this particular industry has. And I'm referring to the startups industry of the world, which has been growing phenomenally over the last few years. Now, I asked everybody a question because the startup investment is drying up, especially at the seed and pre-seed level, even at Series A. Less and less money is available, and startup entrepreneurs and founders are finding it very difficult to raise money. So I asked investors, I asked people like me and other investors, what do they look for? So when they want to invest in a startup, what exactly are they looking for, and what do they consider as their main criteria for investing? And it was very interesting because I gave them 4 options. My first option was, do you look for a founder with a good pitch, that this person is able to deliver his or her startup idea pitch correctly and well? Is that important to you? Or do you look for the founder's background? Or are you looking for somebody who is recommended by a good industry expert? So someone comes in, a startup founder comes in and presents you an idea, and you go ask for suggestion and advice from somebody who's an industry expert in that field. Or the last option was, as an investor, are you looking for a clear and realistic exit plan? So there were 4 options, all right? The question was, what are investors looking for when they want to invest their money in a startup? First option, are they looking for a good pitch by the founder? Second option, are they looking at the founder's background? Third option, are they looking to get recommendation from an industry expert that can recommend that startup or that founder? And number 4, a clear and realistic exit plan. Now, the interesting thing was, after a lot of back and forth, and there's good comments that happened in that poll as well. I was very intrigued by some of you participating with your opinions, and I found it very interesting because I'll tell you the results of the poll later, but let me just explain to you facts. I think that the problem that the industry is suffering is because of the fact that I think the startup world, both from the investor side and the entrepreneur side, is still living in the world of fiction and not in the world of facts, because the facts are completely opposite to my poll results. Okay, the facts are that every year around $300 billion is invested in startups. These are facts. For the last around 8 to 10 years, almost $300 billion are invested every year in startups. And from this $300 billion, every year, almost between 15 to 50 billion is lost in that year. And then the next year, and so on and so forth, because there's a tendency to have 90% failures in the startup world. So the erosion of the startup investment funds is pretty large. It is not small, it's very big. And you would want to ask yourself as an investor, so what's going wrong? Why is the failure rate still so high? Why hasn't it reduced? And I'll tell you why. Because the rules of engagement have not changed. They've still remained the same. The startup entrepreneurs are still working on very high risk elements. That's fine, but it's not something that cannot be managed. Why? Because when my results came in, my poll results came in, when I asked investors, what are you looking for as your chief criteria for investing, almost 36% respondents said they want a clear and realistic exit plan, which they don't get now. Almost 30% said they're looking for strong backgrounds of the founders, which means relevance, which means experience, etc. And 23% said that they're looking for a good pitch. What surprised me was just 11% were looking for advice from an industry expert, which clearly shows you where the problem is. You see, if you asked from an industry expert about a particular startup before you actually invested, your chances of getting good sound advice relative to the industry would be high. And because the polls suggest what it does, that just 11% people ask an industry expert, it's very clear what is going wrong with this industry. I think this industry needs a balance, and what it needs is, as investors, I can understand the excitement of getting carried away with a good pitch, getting carried away with the founder's profile, getting carried away with the opportunity, getting carried away with, I can make it big, I think my participation, my funds can make this startup into a unicorn. That's all great. But I think you need to validate it with somebody who understands the business a little bit more, has seen a lot of it, has seen a lot of these businesses come in and go out. I think the reason of high failure is because there's no validation. There's no validation, not from the entrepreneur's side, that definitely is required, but also from the investor side. I think investors need to validate their decision to invest in a startup before they actually invest. I think this should provide some level of correction and balance to this failure rate, which is around 90%. It really has to reduce, because if the startup world is getting $300 billion every year, I think we need to see a lot more successes, because the more successful the startup world is, the more jobs that will be created. And looking at the economy now, with all of the COVID and crisis that's around COVID that has been created, I think the startup world is the only hope left. So rather than criticizing it, rather than trying to shoot it down, I think everybody, all of us, should get together and try to help founders and startup entrepreneurs find new ways of getting more money, but try to validate that money in a manner by which there is some realistic decisions that are heading more towards success and less towards failure. I hope this video helps, and I hope my poll was intriguing and interesting to all of you.